My name is Rico Thanat Whirl.
Iad eis é abhar ní Genian sé ci aní nasle do tóigh líní basistí, tota na éidir se té, but aní éidir sin eile.
My Tlingit name is Kate Leochte.
My Tlingit name is Dach Kit Utch.
And I'm Chitlaish.
How did we meet? In 2017, I went to Aotearoa, New Zealand, on a solo international trip. It was a really hard time of my life. My grandmother had died. Yeah, about 2 years before then, I had left a long relationship for about 4 years, and that relationship was not healthy. I think from 2015 to 2017, I was trying to find healing. I was going through a lot of grief. I had this kind of pushing feeling to go to New Zealand. I needed to find a way to go, and whatever the purpose or meaning that would get me there didn't really matter as long as I got there. And so there was this conference called He Manawa Whinawa that I had come across, and so I applied for funding through my school, and I bought the ticket. I figured out housing with a friend I knew that lived in Hamilton, New Zealand, and I just went. And then I found out I got the funding when I was boarding the flight to New Zealand. So I get there, and I'm staying with my friend Te Tiroa, who happened to be a mutual friend of my husband.
During that time, Te Tiroa had asked me if I wanted to attend He Mana Whenua with him, with, knowing full well that he was looking after Maka. And so Maka walked in and she was wearing part of her regalia as she was walking down the hallway, and I remember thinking, phew, who's that? Who's that wahine ata? I went over, I left the room and I went over to get some fresh air.
And the documentary was awful. So I was like, okay, I need to get out of here. This is like such a depressing film. And I go out.
Like a little pond.
Yeah, a pond.
A little pond.
With ducks. And then I go and I breathe. And I look over and he was sitting there. And I was like, shh. Scheiße. It's that man, boy.
We got to talking after I had told her that it wasn't a good idea to feed ducks. Te Tirua was being the little cupid that he was making suggestions that we all hang out and we all get to know each other a little bit more with the group that we were with. You told me that you should come up and stay in Auckland because he was gonna be working, and I would be your tour guide, host person. And yeah, came back and picked you up the next week and knew full well after our conversation in the car that you would be the one that I would spend the rest of my life with, and took you home to meet my parents, 3 days after we had met.
You want to tell the story?
Go ahead.
Okay. I was invited by Ozzy Shakely to a Thunderbird party. It was in November. We were getting to the happy times of the party. Lyle, I had never seen him before and I've never met him before. I was sitting at a table with a really beautiful crew of Raven ladies. We were enjoying ourselves at the party. And anyway, Lyle comes through the door. This is happening down at the Elizabeth Pradovich Hall, and he is wearing a cedar hat and a seal vest, and he's drumming. And as he's song calling, there's this beautiful group of women behind him singing and making sea turn calls. And you talk about a magical moment. That was it for me. I claimed at the table that I was sitting with that there's my future husband. And I've never been married before. I have been in relationships before, but this was like something hit me and I was like, oh yeah, that's my husband. Turns out that one of the ladies sitting at the table with me knew Lyle and said, "Oh, that's my relative. In fact, his dad is just a couple tables down. I'm going to go grab him and introduce you to him." And I was like, "All right." So I'm getting all ready. I'm like practicing my looks and my, I'm like preparing for this interaction. The lady brings his father over to me, and I stand up, I introduce myself, and I express my interest in his son. I'm really excited to meet his son, only to find out that his son, well, you can take over the story, hun. Tell him what happened.
Well, my father and my cousin had let me know that there was a bunch of Raven ladies who wanted to meet me. I said, okay, give me a minute. They told me specifically who, to go all the way down to the end of the table. There's a Raven lady who really wants to meet you. And I said, okay, I'll be there in a few minutes. And I just finished drumming, singing. And then I got to the table, and then I got nervous. I got so nervous that I choked and I walked away. But not my proudest moment either. But I was definitely in awe.
We met a couple months later in January. My girlfriend, my best friend, Catherine Edwards, and I decided we were going to go dancing. We had enjoyed our time at this club here in Juneau, but at the time I think it was called Marlentini's. Not one of my proudest moments. But anyway, we were up there and we were visiting, and we were going from one side over to the dance floor, and I see Lyle, and of course Catherine states the obvious, he's right there. There's that young man. And I was like, oh. But he was surrounded by a lot of women, and I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to go. And I mean, because what if he's seen somebody? But it turns out, to my luck, my good fortune, that it was all of his relatives, and he had just come into town. You know, I think I know how to dance. I'm really glad that he and I were dancing, but I don't think that we were really worried about how we looked on the dance floor, because I think we were both really excited to have that opportunity to actually formally meet. The rest is history as far as the introduction. We have literally been together ever since, but when we first formally met, I was just coming out of a few years of trying to figure out what makes me happy, because I had been in two really terrible relationships previous to Lyle, and so I was trying to figure out what was going on, because I thought, how can I have the misfortune of having such really bad relationships? It turned out that there were some things I needed to learn about myself before I was ready for a relationship. I was just, learning about things that made me happy, learning about red flags, figuring out what I liked and what I didn't like. And when I met Lyle, I was feeling pretty good about understanding myself. We took a couple weeks to get to know each other, a lot of long visits, a lot of hiking around Juneau. A couple weeks into the friends, we decided we were gonna take the next step with our relationship and actually start dating each other. We were friends in January. We started dating in February. Probably after the first week of February, I knew he was the one. And that was a pretty cool experience for me. I knew I needed to say something to him, which I've never felt in any of my other relationships. I needed to express to him how I felt and where I had hoped this relationship was going to go. I had figured that I had nothing to lose, but I was super nervous. I had no red flags, and we had the talk. You wanted to share anything?
I just remember you letting me know that you were not looking for just friends, but you were ready to start a life with somebody. And that there was just nothing to waste. Don't waste my time. This is what I want. I was excited. I was scared, but I was excited. Yeah.
We met at a casino.
The traditional way.
Shout out to Isleta Pueblo.
Yeah. At an indigenous Comic-Con at a casino.
Yes.
She
In
was-
Albuquerque.
She was dressed up as Queen Amidala.
I was in cosplay. Enrico was wearing cat ears that he found.
I borrowed them from a friend. We've got a lot of mutual friends, and so like we always were like in each other's like circles. Kinda
This is
like,
the first time I ever seen you in
Yeah,
person, though.
yeah, that's
when
when our
you
circles
side hugged
finally,
me. Gross. You
collided.
side-hugged me.
So,
Yeah, that's how we met.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next question?
What do you appreciate about your partner? And what does it mean to be a healthy partner yourself?
So what I appreciate about Maka is, you know, at first glance, her dedication to what she's been doing, her persistence, her discipline, and also how she's pushing for a cause. She has a kaupapa that she's working towards, or working for, which is her people. I really admire that. As we got to know each other a little bit more, you know, the understanding became a lot deeper and broader, wider as well. And so now there's a whole new level of appreciation for you know, what she has, what she does.
Your partner has characteristics. So for you, your
Special grace.
the categories, you very rarely lose your temper. I think I've learned a lot about being able to adapt and being able to take a moment to pause before I lose my temper or say something, to be more intentional about how I communicate and to be able to communicate right off rather than holding something inside, which I had been doing, I think, before. I think communicating things right off is the best way to make sure they don't grow into something with thorns on it. And I think that's a big part of building a healthy relationship, is being able to be vulnerable and be honest enough to make sure you're only really growing medicine together rather than something to harm or hurt anyone.
Yeah.
Rock, paper, scissors, it?
I'll go first.
Whoa, whoa. Woo.
I think there's a lot of the obvious things, like she's smart and she's funny and playful and ambitious, and there's a lot of things to admire about her. And to pick one out specifically, I really appreciate how when she decided to become a designer, that became like her whole identity. Like she's a designer like through and through, like from whether it's dealing with me or with a project, she designs her way through to find solutions.
There are a lot of things I appreciate about Rico. I can't say the most, but something that like comes to mind right away is how patient you are as a person. I like really admire the fact that you can do so many things and have so much tolerance and forgiveness and kindness towards other people. I mean, it really like blows my mind. Like, no, it's true. It's hard.
Thanks.
I appreciate communication and patience, and then not afraid to do big things, not just for ourselves, but for our whole family. And everything that she brings to the family, I always appreciate, because I know I can trust her with anything.
I think for me, taking that leap of faith that this is the one, I think what I appreciate most about this relationship is that our ability to be vulnerable with each other, the space to heal, and I think also the fact that we're best friends is what I really appreciate, because I know today that, you know, you can call it a date, but he's really my life partner. And so I know that if I want to try something like scuba diving, or if I want to learn a new dance step, I know he's down. I also know that he's got my back. And I didn't always have that from my other relationships. And but this is, I think, like the most important part of our relationship is that we've like really grown with each other. We've learned how to communicate with each other in a way that isn't disrespectful or harmful. And that's so new, and it's so scary, because, you know, when you're with the person that you love, you're always trying to be your best version of yourself, and you're always growing. And I think that's like so important for me anyway. And it's so different, radically different than any other relationship I've been in. So that's a lot that I appreciate about us.
I think one thing that's kind of a theme in our relationship is working hard. You know, when we're on our own, we work hard so that when we're together, we can take care of each other and have like a little bit of flex in our schedules between our work and projects. So it just gives us that ability to have time and maybe a little money to like treat each other, take care of each other in whatever way we need. We're in a long distance relationship right now, and so we won't see each other for like weeks, months on end sometimes, and so it takes a lot of bravery to just get through moments where maybe the other person's busy and you just haven't heard from them for a few hours, and it's like you just have to be brave and be like, okay, she's just busy at work, I know that. Message her later. Let her work hard.
So dramatic. See each other in months. No, you haven't gone by 1 month where you haven't seen each other. We're lucky like that.
It's true, yeah.
So what does it take to maintain a healthy relationship? I mean, Rico did say communication, so I can't say the same thing. But it's kind of like a subgroup of it. I probably have to say knowing each other's boundaries. While it's one thing to communicate, it's another thing to be receptive of your partner's likes and dislikes. Like, I know now when Rico says it's just fine, it's not a great thing, it's not a bad thing, but it's not his favorite. So if it's just fine, I'm like, oh, that's not acceptable. It's gotta be great. So I think knowing each other, like what you're comfortable with and what you're expecting from the relationship, like being honest is really a part of it. If you think you're ready to be in a relationship, great. If not, that's fine. Just be honest with people. And especially at like a distance relationship, we live in a great century where we can like FaceTime each other, like, you know, text each other, and we don't seem that far. I mean, it is far, but it can be hard, but we live at this time where like we can communicate as much as we need to, and so I think that helps maintain a healthy relationship.
Knowing that I need to take care of my health so I can be there for you and our family. Self-care. Because if I don't take care of what I need to function for you folks, then I'm not doing something right, and I need to correct it.
You know, I talked about previous relationships and just being a hot mess. I didn't know how to communicate. We didn't know how to trust each other with my previous partners. And in this relationship, I didn't want it to be like the previous relationship. So I think it took us years to figure out how to communicate with each other without shutting down. I think being aware of my feelings and communicating when something doesn't feel right, something didn't sound right, maybe it didn't look right. In this relationship, we've been able to like slow down and go, whoa, boy, I'm really sorry I reacted that way. Or I'm sorry I said that. I didn't mean that. And trying to find the humility, I think, that's not always easy to do. But I think that's, in order to have a healthy relationship, you've got to be able to call yourself out on your thoughts, conversations, behaviors. And it's ongoing, it's challenging all the time. And I think the other thing that's really healthy is that he's my boyfriend. He's like my hot, sexy man. And so I always keep myself in that space because we're going on 16 years traditionally, and 17 years vital statistics. So, and it feels good to have somebody that I love that I can flirt with. I want to flirt with. We have a lot of fun flirting with each other. Sometimes it gets annoying, I'm sure, to others, but we try to mind our P's and Q's in public. But I really enjoy his time. I enjoy his attention, being able to identify when we got to call ourselves out, when we can call each other out, and then designating honey time. It's really sweet.
And one of their best advices is that, you know, don't be afraid to step back. Don't be afraid to take a breath, step back. You know, if you're angry, you know, Dad always goes out for a drive when he's frustrated, comes back, and then calms down.
I go downstairs.
Yeah.
By the fireplace.
What was the other thing? Always try and listen. This is something we've learned as well, is that you should always try and listen, no matter how fired up you feel inside, no matter how frustrated you are that the other person isn't listening to you or isn't understanding your point of view. You should always listen, otherwise you get into a situation of pushing the other person down just to get your point across. And then that person does the same thing, and then the situation gets worse. You should always take a step back and listen, try and understand each other rather than throwing your point across just for the sake of winning an argument. So what you're arguing with the person that you love, what's to win if that person ends up hurting your feelings? You agree?
Yeah, I think it can be good to like repeat back something that someone's saying. And this is something that I'm learning at work, and I want to like apply it where someone might be saying something and what you're hearing could be different. And so I think being able to repeat back and say, okay, so what I'm hearing is that you feel X, Y, and Z. And they might be like, no, what I mean is blah, blah, blah. And they might structure it because the way that you understand and your communication style is different than the other person's. And I think learning how to translate that, because it's an entire language. Even if you're speaking English or Tlingit or Te Reo Māori, the language itself is how you communicate and how you understand can be different.
Okay. Well, a piece of advice that I would give someone seeking a healthy relationship is to take your time. I mean, we're a little bit older. We're not in our 20s anymore, and I mean, and we just kind of met and it worked. I wasn't in any rush. I actually had I'm probably the worst person to ask about like relationships because I I was never about a relationship. I was all about like experiencing my life and, you know, just enjoying every minute of it. And then we met at an Indian casino. I'm just kidding. We met at Pueblo Isleta Casino, and it worked. It just felt right. It didn't feel rushed. I mean, it kind of felt rushed that one time you messaged me and got after me. But no, I think taking your time and like, if you are single and you don't know how to be, maybe explore that and, you know, cherish yourself in that way.
I think doing the things that make you feel the most you, that make you feel like the strongest, happiest version of you. If you're doing that, you'll probably end up in a place where somebody who is also trying to be their strongest, happiest self is there's just a greater chance that you'll like find somebody compatible like that, like at a indigenous Comic-Con.
Oh, I think one more piece of advice. You can have a lot of compatibility with someone. Like I think we have a lot in common. Like we both kind of nerd out about the same things. Both really like sci-fi. A lot of our like efforts in design is towards a betterment of community, and not in like a cheesy kind of way, but in like a let's fix these systems kind of way. And I think that's really great. But there's some things we don't have like any interest in each other's lives, but like it's still nice to like harp on that, to say, because like for instance Rico really likes gaming and like on a PC. We liked board games, but you really like it on a PC, and it's not like something I've ever explored, so I've tried to do it. Sometimes I'll ask you like what games you're playing. I mean, it's just being courteous and being interested in the other person's like life, even though you might not have any like idea what's going on in there. And same with kind of like sports. Like we went to the basketball game the other day, and you were like watching me watch the basketball game, asking questions. So yeah, I think that's important. Taking interest in each other's interests.
Yeah.
Communicating, being open, and like Colleen said, owning our mistakes. If I say something wrong, I'll take the time to understand why what I said was hurtful, and not do a surface apology, but to just let her know I understand that what I did say or what I did do was harmful, and just really appreciate her patience on letting me process, so that I can be a better partner for her.
Support each other in our goals, and I think that's really important. So building off of communication. And then the other one I want to stress is, this is the first relationship where I've never felt judged, and I didn't realize how important that was until Lyle. I think we put a lot of unnecessary pressure on ourselves as individuals where we're not good enough. And then you meet somebody, and if they're not healthy and you always feel like you're never good enough, I'm just really thankful that in this relationship, it's like absolute unconditional love, and there's no judgment. And I think that's super healthy, because I think sometimes we have these really bad habits that we pick up from other relationships, and we just assume that poison is going to be there in any relationship. But what I've learned with Lyle over the years is that that's not true. And this relationship is what we make of it.
Be courageous. Take the steps to make sure that, if you can, take the steps to ensure that everyone's happy. And if that's not a possibility, take the steps to make sure that you're healthy. I think be courageous. And always remember that love is like a $1 coin to play the game. If you don't have love for the other person, then you can't play the game. The game is the journey, not the $1 coin. And that's something that my mom always told me anyways.
To recognize and name your emotions.
Mm.
And so if you're feeling anger towards someone, I think recognize and name it when you're feeling it. And acknowledge it. And then try to work on it before it turns into something that causes pain or hurt. And I think the intention isn't to hurt, to like, I want to hurt that person because they made me upset. It's like, I want that person to understand why I'm hurting. And so being able to name and recognize that is important. And I think the last piece is, I think your ancestors have an incredible way of being present and guiding, and that you can ask for help.
First of all, thank you for the interview. You did a great job, dear.
Thank you. One of the things that I enjoy doing, what I like to do is I like to open the doors for you, or open up the car doors for you, or pull the chair out for you.
I like that too.
And take your coat, or it might seem like a simple thing, but for me, that's how I show my appreciation for you. And it seems like the subtle things, but it is, for me, something that I can always do, and something that I can always give.
Thank you. You know, I think it's really important to remember that past relationships don't define you. And for me, a hard lesson that I had to learn early on in this relationship was that he wasn't the person who hurt me before. And so I had to correct myself, correct my behavior, and not treat him in a way that he was having to make me feel good about myself, because that's not his job. I think what I would say to anybody who finds any kind of interest in this interview with Lyle and I is to make sure that you remember that if this is somebody that is so special to you, that you reflect on the past relationships and apply the best version of yourself always for your loved one. And, you know, I think don't give up. Don't give up on yourself, and don't give up on love. There's some really amazing people out there. I think that's probably what I would say.
I
Sorry.
think another thing is knowing that you're worth working hard for, that you're worth fighting for, that you're worth loving, that you're worth knowing that I get to wake up and fall asleep to you every day.
He's my boyfriend. I just want to say one more thing. I think that's really important. And we've learned, I think, humbly through children's eyes, if we're like down on ourselves, they're going to be down on themselves. And if the kids see us love ourselves by treating ourselves with respect, loving our figures, investing in our taking the time to dress nice, or just putting our best foot forward, I think that's really important too. And one of the things that if we hear each other talking negative about ourselves, we're just like, whoa, you can't talk about my lover that way. And I think that really means that, you know, you got to do a shift. You have to do a shift on how you see yourself. Because if you're not loving yourself, if you don't know how to love yourself, then no one's ever going to be able to love you the way that you want to be loved, because you haven't figured out how to love yourself. And that doesn't have to be hard, just means that you treat yourself with respect and you stick up for yourself, and you make sure that you're not hanging out with toxic people. Oh yeah, don't settle.
Always remember you're worth loving.
Let's leave this place for another place.